The Legend of Zelda series is my second favorite video game series. One of the main reasons why I love it so much is because of the dungeons. In this video, I'm counting down my list of my top 10 3D Legend of Zelda dungeons. This list was perhaps the hardest list for me to make, as there are so many great 3D Zelda dungeons, so it was very difficult for me to only pick 10 dungeons. Also, I'll be leaving out Breath of the Wild's Hyrule Castle, because it's not really a dungeon, as it can fly straight to the final boss from the start. Please note that this is just my opinion. I have to keep saying this because I have such unpopular opinions, so there will always be hate. So with that being said, let's get into it. Starting my list off with the Ancient Cistern. The Ancient Cistern is a very well designed dungeon, and the theme really suits it. I complained about Skyward Sword's motion controls, but the one dungeon where I actually liked using them was the Ancient Cistern. This is especially shown in the amazing boss fight of the dungeon, Koloktos. I really like tough dungeons, and the reason why the Ancient Cistern is so high on my list because it overall was not tough at all. The whip was an item that's very fun to use though, and I absolutely loved the lower floor. It was totally unexpected in a dungeon that looked so peaceful. Number 9 is the Lana mining facility, the hardest dungeon in Skyward Sword, but I absolutely loved it. The soundtrack kinda drove me insane at first, but I've definitely grown fond to it. Also, I love the dungeon's atmosphere. I said that it was the hardest dungeon in Skyward Sword, but it's not necessarily because of the puzzles, but because of Skyward Sword's motion controls. If there's any part in the game where the motion controls sucked the most, it's in this dungeon. For such a difficult dungeon, the boss was incredibly easy, which is disappointing, but overall I loved the Lana mining facility. Number 8 is the Great Bay Temple, another difficult but also really fun dungeon. The Water Temple in Ocarina of Time was also good, but the constant switching between normal to Iron Boots really killed the enjoyment. I don't really like the theme of this dungeon, I find it rather annoying, but the Ice Arrow is my favorite item in the game. It's a lot of fun to use in the Great Bay Temple. Now, unlike in the Lana mining facility, the Great Bay Temple was difficult all around, including the boss, which is probably the hardest boss in the game. Number 7 is the Temple of Time. The Temple of Time is a very straightforward dungeon. I absolutely loved the design. Both the mini-boss and the end boss were a lot of fun to fight. A very unique item is obtained in this dungeon, which allows Link to bring certain statues to life. The Temple of Time wasn't very long of a dungeon, but overall it was super fun. Number 6 is the Goron Mines. The Goron Mines is a great dungeon. I absolutely loved using the Iron Boots magnetically. I thought that was absolutely genius. The theme fits the temple extremely well, and I really liked how instead of only getting one boss key, you have to collect 3 pieces to form the boss key. Also, the build up to the Goron Mines is awesome. The overall dungeon is extremely easy, with probably the easiest boss in the game, but still, it's a really good dungeon. Number 5 is the Wind Temple. Wind Waker did not have very good dungeons, but I love the Wind Temple. The theme is awesome, and controlling Makar was a lot of fun. The Wind Temple is both challenging and very engaging, and the hookshot is always fun to use. Let's not forget about Malgera though, one of my favorite bosses in Zelda history. I also love the atmosphere, and the overall design of the Wind Temple is awesome. Number 4 is the Lakebed Temple, my favorite water temple of the 3D Zeldas. I loved the mechanics of swimming with the Zora Tunic, and the claw shot is fun to use. Unlike in Ocarina of Time, you only had to raise the water level twice. The theme is pretty good, and the mini-boss doesn't really fit in Twilight Princess, as it's really goofy, and it looked like it would fit in Wind Waker, but I still enjoyed the fight. And the boss, I really enjoyed fighting, but it was extremely easy for a difficult dungeon. Number 3 is the Fire Temple. The Fire Temple is my favorite temple from Ocarina of Time. I love the design and the atmosphere of the Fire Temple. It really captures the feeling of being inside an active volcano. I really loved the overall concept of the Fire Temple, which was to rescue the Gorons. I felt that was really unique. The theme fits the temple so well, and the Megaton Hammer was a pretty cool item. But I did not really like how it was pretty much useless outside of the Fire Temple. But fighting Volvagia was a lot of fun. Number 2 is the Stone Tower Temple. The 4th Majora's Mask dungeon is my favorite Majora's Mask dungeon. The build up to the Stone Tower Temple was insanely good. In terms of difficulty, the Stone Tower Temple is probably on par with the Great Bay Temple. The theme might be my favorite Zelda dungeon theme of all time, and the whole concept of inverting the temple is just brilliant. I love the fact that you have to use all the transformations from the game, and the fact that there are 2 awesome mini-bosses. The only part of the Stone Tower Temple that I did not like was the boss. Twin Mold is definitely the weaker of the 4 Majora's Mask bosses. Before I get to my favorite Zelda dungeon, here are some dungeons that didn't quite make my list. And my favorite Legend of Zelda dungeon is the City in the Sky. Twilight Princess had the best dungeons out of the 3D Zeldas, which played a huge role in Twilight Princess being my favorite Zelda. The City in the Sky's atmosphere is absolutely insane. I can't say the theme is very good, but it definitely fits the dungeon. The City in the Sky is perhaps the most difficult dungeon in Twilight Princess, which is one of the reasons I like it so much, considering Twilight Princess is overall an easy game. The mini-boss was pretty fun to fight, and I absolutely loved using the double claw shots. The boss was my favorite boss fight in the game, with an amazing theme and incredible atmosphere. The City in the Sky is similar to Divine Beast Valmado in Breath of the Wild, and if Valmado didn't take 10 minutes to complete and was actually difficult, it would very well be up against the City in the Sky. And there is my top 10 3D Legend of Zelda dungeons. Thank you all for watching, and let me know in the comments what your favorite Legend of Zelda dungeons are.